The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I address this House today as a follow-up to a question I asked her 2 weeks ago with respect to the dithering of this government while Canada's oil and gas industry, our nation's pride, continues to face headwinds largely as a result of world affairs, but also realistically as a result of this government's bias towards an industry and its workers who have largely provided for this nation's prosperity for the past several decades. On March 25th of this year, pardon me, Madam Speaker, I'm going to put on my headphones here. I think maybe I'm not coming through quite clearly. Thank you. On March 25th of this year, at the beginning of a pandemic whose effects were multiplied by an ill-timed global oil price being large,
I'm sorry, but your connection is breaking.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. On March 25th of this year, at the beginning of a pandemic whose effects were multiplied by an ill-timed global oil price war between large state-owned enterprises half a world away, the then Minister of Finance in this government proclaimed that support for the industry would be provided not in days or weeks, but hours. While clearly that proclamation was overpromising and under-delivering. Nearly 7 months later, the oil and gas industry continues to face the onslaught of temporary, drastic reductions in demand for its resource amidst a world supply that is robust for the near future. Were this situation to be a new structural scenario for the world energy industry, it's certain that state-owned enterprises would know and would cease further development of their assets. Let me provide clarity that despite some European producers, this is not the case at all. The Middle East sees robust demand for its oil resource for the foreseeable future, going out 30 to 40 years. Yes, the world needs energy, and it will still need the energy intensity provided by hydrocarbons, for which the world has, as of yet, no close competitor, particularly with respect to transportation fuels. I know parties will quarrel that this is a sunset resource, and every energy-educated person will tell them to give their head a shake, or to get an actual education on how energy is produced and which energy sources have environmental footprints. To be clear, Mr. Speaker, every energy source has an environmental footprint. At this moment, we, Canadians in particular, are betting that the environmental effects caused by greenhouse gases are worse than those produced by other energy sources, as in the soot and greenhouse gases produced by burning biomass, as in the full-scale build-out required for an electricity grid that currently has no replacement source of electricity here or around the world. Damming all the rivers in the world will not replace the energy we use and has its own environmental impacts, and the steel, aluminum, concrete, copper, nickel, aggregate, rare earth metals, and construction industries, all heavy on emissions, will somehow free us from our power needs. We're deluding ourselves. And this government is a cheerleader in this pretense. Sometimes we get to see some sense of reality emerge, and the vanity of the slogans we've heard for 5 years meet up with the wall of reality. Such seemed to be the case early in this pandemic. The government seemed to indicate that yes, this industry, the world's environmentally leading oil and gas extraction industry, heavily regulated to ensure it meets the exacting environmental standards of Canadians, would withstand the current downturn. A short pause of attacking the industry with obfuscation and opaque regulation and indeterminate timelines for decision-making, when the government might need to admit how important this industry is to Canadians and to the world, particularly with respect to our environmental practices. Believe me, Madam Speaker, for a country that produces less than 5% of the world's oil supply, we lead by example, environmentally and with respect to society's outcomes. Show me an industry participant around the world whose practices are as sound, as transparent, as responsive, and as progressive as the Canadian oil and gas industry. There is none, Madam.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's an important question. We all know that Canada's resource sector, their workers and their suppliers have been hard hit by the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. Madam Speaker, nowhere has this been more pronounced than in the petroleum sector, where producers have faced the added challenge of record low prices caused by the dual impact of a price war and a collapse in demand. The success of Canada's energy sector is critical to the successful restart and recovery of the economy. And that's why our government moved swiftly last spring with more than $2.5 billion in direct investment in the industry to create and protect good jobs while strengthening the industry's environmental performance. This new funding includes more than $1.7 billion to clean up orphan and inactive oil and gas wells in the 3 western provinces, creating an expected 5,200 jobs in Alberta alone, and providing lasting environmental benefits. We've also launched a $750 million emissions reduction fund to lower greenhouse gases and, in particular, methane emissions in Canada's oil and gas sector. This new fund includes $75 million to help the offshore industry in Newfoundland and Labrador create and maintain jobs through pollution reduction efforts. And just last month, the Minister of Natural Resources announced a further investment to support jobs and ensure a sustainable, long-term, low-emitting future for the province's offshore oil industry. At the same time, we've expanded credit and liquidity supports for mid-market companies through the Business Credit Availability Program and established the Large Employee Emergency Financing Facility, or LEAF, to assist Canada's larger companies. Madam Speaker, we've also taken action to directly sustain workers in all sectors through the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. For oil and gas workers in Alberta, this crucial support meant sustaining 60,000 jobs alone at the height of the crisis. And Madam Speaker, our government has consistently said that the success of Canada's energy sector is critical to the successful restart and recovery of the economy. And our unprecedented efforts during this challenging time reflect that. Madam Speaker, this pandemic has reminded us of the power of individual choices and collective will. Governments at all levels, regardless of political stripes, are working together to ensure that all Canadians have the vital protection and support they need when they need it most. And Madam Speaker, our government will continue to pursue all avenues to ensure Canada's energy sector continues to be a key source of good jobs that support a strong economy in Canada. We're supporting workers, we're supporting families, and we're supporting all Albertans and all workers in the energy sector. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Hundreds of thousands of oilfield workers have lost their jobs in the last 5 years, and that's impacted their families. More than 500,000 more Canadians and their families are nervously watching during a pandemic as their government continues to act nonsensically towards their industry, seemingly indifferent to global realities or the effect their inactions will have on families and lives and futures and on the health of Canadians. These Canadians, bewildered by the insouciance of this Liberal government, are questioning as never before the way this country makes decisions. These workers, this industry, which collectively had contributed over $200 billion to Canadian social and economic development over the past decade and contributed to the world's environmental advancements, their concerns are being swept aside now. At a time when this industry's prosperity in a transparent, open democracy such as Canada has been is paramount for how the world emerges from a great pandemic, we need something better. We see this field as Canadians, if we do, as it seems this government would choose, by both its actions and its inactions, to the benefit of other countries that do not meet the standards to which we aspire, or in this government's case, to which we pretend to aspire.
Parliamentary Secretary.
Madame la Présidente, j'apprécie toujours l'occasion d'expliquer la manière dont notre gouvernement a soutenu et continuera de soutenir nos travailleurs du secteur énergétique. We've taken extraordinary measures to support workers in the energy sector because we know these are extraordinary times for families right across the country, especially, Madam Speaker, in our oil and gas industry. And that's why both since forming government and over the last 8 months, our government has put in place the measures that I highlighted earlier and have approved good projects that will be built so that we can support Alberta's workers. We understand that by supporting a strong economic recovery, particularly in our energy sector, Canadian businesses will continue to attract investment in good projects that support environmental and social priorities and create jobs for all Canadians. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.